How are things in Nashville at the moment with this whole Corona stuff? Are you guys getting back to some sort of normality at the moment?
Yeah, yeah, it's super interesting because it's like I think overall, as far as the states go, we were on the beginning, on the more aggressive side of opening up sooner, and then like one, it's just a little confusing because like one of the more popular bars here, a couple of the bars, they just like shut down yesterday, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna shut down for like a week." I don't know if someone on the staff got it or whatever, but then overall, we are still in those phases moving towards opening up. And you got bands that are back on the stages and stuff like that. So overall, it's promising, but still kind of confusing,
Well, I know you've been doing a couple of kind of limited capacity shows, haven't you, recently? So how has that
Yeah.
been for you? Because I would imagine it's such a relief to get back on stage, but also very strange to not have a room full of people as well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The couple shows I've done have felt pretty normal so far. And this weekend, I actually am going to go do my first full band gig. So that's exciting, to be back with the guys on stage. So
Good stuff. Now, for anyone who didn't see the little Destination Country introduces video that you did for us, where you gave us some background and how you got into the country music scene in Nashville, give us a kind of brief overview of your background and how a Boston boy makes his way to Nashville to pursue a career in music.
Yeah, sure. So I was, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, and I grew up always kind of doing music and stuff like that. But sort of the interesting part of my story is I was in bands up until kind of college, and then at a certain point, we just disbanded, and I went away to school, and then after that, I got a sales job, and I there was a period of probably 6 years where I didn't play out or do anything with like a band or any sort of music, aside from just messing around here and there. And then at a certain point, I just kind of realized I was unhappy without having music in my life, and that's when I decided I was going to be a front man, because I wasn't usually the front man in previous bands. So I was like, you know what, you love to write songs, go take some voice lessons, see if you can become a singer, and just kind of like embrace that journey. And I built things up for a period of like 3 or 4 years in Boston, and then I was just kind of like, okay, cool. I got a little bit of a fan base going, got some music that's released, it's being well received. Where do we go from here? And that's when I quit my day job, moved to Nashville, and just started like hitting the road, just playing gigs and playing bars, playing anywhere that I could, anywhere that would have me. So.
Yeah. Well, what was the music scene like back in Boston? Because obviously you've got the Berklee School of Music there, so I guess it's a pretty kind of talented community that you got in Boston.
Yeah, there's a ton of talent there, and like you said, Berklee, it just brings in. It's insane how much talent is actually in Massachusetts, but it's an eclectic scene, I guess you could say. There's definitely a little bit of everything. There's a hip hop scene. I still think of indie rock kind of when I think of Boston, but kind of like garagey almost. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's a little bit less of like a mainstream sound. But I was introduced to the country scene, which is a pretty big country scene actually there. And I was impressed with so many of the artists there. And yeah, so Boston really is kind of a little bit of everything. There's like there's what you picture as like rock clubs, but then there's, a lot of bars to play music at and stuff like that. So I started off kind of doing the rock club thing for a while, and then transitioned to incorporating more like 3-hour bar gigs and stuff like that, where, you're doing a lot of covers and things like that. So I would say there's a little bit of everything. I will say the cost of living is very high there, though. So it's not easy, not an easy place to make a living if you're just doing music. And a lot of the great acts seem to leave at a certain point, unfortunately.
Right. So how is Nashville in comparison to that in terms of the cost of living? Do you actually find it easier now that you're in Nashville, or is it?
Yeah, I really do. Nashville is a very fast growing city. So the cost of living and the rents are just, they're going up, but you know, there's no income, there's no state income tax. And just overall, it seems like, if you want to, you know, go live 30, 40 minutes outside the city and have dirt cheap rent, that's an option for you. Whereas a state like Massachusetts, it's very expensive. The whole state kind of is. So, so I've noticed the difference for sure as far as that goes. Yeah.
So tell us about that process of when you actually first moved to Nashville, because you're suddenly a very, very small fish in a huge pond at that point.
Yeah.
So was that a scary experience for you, or is that something that motivated you as soon as you came to town?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sort of felt like I was leaving Boston as someone who like had established like a decent name for myself, but I was nowhere near the most popular person in Boston. So I was like, kind of like, let me leave while I'm still very humble. And I was like, kind of fine with like starting over. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just like, you know what, you definitely have a lot of learning to do still as far as songwriting and becoming a great performer. And I mean, I sort of always, and I hopefully always will look at things as like, you always have a lot to learn, and that will allow you to grow. And then hopefully get to a point where you look back in 3 or 4 years and you're like, oh, look how much I've grown. You know, that's the goal. And like Nashville's such a good place for that because, you know, like I was saying on the Destination Country podcast, that like you can go into any bar at any night and there's a great singer and there's a lot of great original writers that are performing their songs at writers' rounds and stuff like that. And it's, it just shows you that like people are working hard to write songs every single day here. You know, songwriters will write 150, 200 songs a year. And we're talking songwriters that maybe don't even have #1 cuts yet. So people are working hard here and it shows, you know. It's kind of like talented people from every single state in the US and abroad, everywhere, every country are coming here. And so it's like, it's humbling, but in a good way. It makes you want to work hard and get better at your craft.
Yeah. Has it affected how often you write songs as well, being in the Nashville scene? Have you found that you're writing a ton more now that you're kind of in that environment and surrounded by so much talent?
Yeah, it's another great question. And I was talking to one of my writer friends about this the other day. Being that I am fully independent right now, it's sometimes I feel like my means are being a little stretched as far as like, okay, you got to book your tours, you got to do your social media, you got to write your songs, you got to do, you know, a million different things. And I do try to set aside, let's say, 1 or 2 days a week where like songwriting is the focus, because I've noticed that songwriting can sometimes get pushed to the back burner for me because I'm so business minded and I'm so focused on growing the career that I try to answer your question, I have to carve out creativity sessions now. So that, you know, otherwise it'll just never happen. There's just not enough like downtime to just be like, oh yeah, I'm bored, let's write a song. It's like, all right, even if I'm writing by myself, I try to like carve it into my schedule. So I would say the volume of the amount of songs I write is a little bit less than I would like, but I feel like I make pretty good use of the time, and I'm always writing down ideas, you know, so it's like if I'm sitting down to write a song, okay, I got eight ideas, which one do we want to go with? Like, you know, that kind of thing. So
Now, moving on to the actual music you've released recently, Same Old Places came out not too long ago. So tell us a little bit about that one, how it came together, and also what it was like to release that during a pandemic, because I guess promotional not the easiest.
Yeah, for sure. So I wrote that song with the message in mind of Same Old Places being, I told it through the eyes of like a girl who wants to leave her hometown, but, you know, is surrounded by family and friends that maybe they never left their hometown. And, you know, through their eyes, that's silly and kind of like, you know, like minimizing this person's dreams. And I feel like it's a relatable idea because we are sort of a lot of times very influenced by the people around us and how do they see things. And like, that kind of rubs off on us. And I like, the more I do music and the more, just the older I get, the more I see that, like, you have to block out all noise. It doesn't matter who it is. You have to like figure out what you want to do. And a lot of times we have this voice in our, inside of us, but we drown it out, and then we really, well, yeah, I'd like to do this, but I like to do this, but this is, people are going to think this or whatever. And so Same Old Place is about leaving that behind and just following whatever your dream is. But it's also, Same Old Places can be, people and stuff like that. And like what, not everyone's, needs to leave their hometown. It's not saying that everyone has to go and run off to a different place, but it could be just eliminating people in your area, that are kind of toxic to you or kind of bring you down or don't inspire you to think outside the box, So I'm very passionate about that. And I pretty much just released that song because I wanted that message out there. It was just a song that I was like, you know what, this is kind of different for me. I think it's just something I want to put out. And production wise, we made it very rock, which I think will be a lot of fun to play live. So I thought it was like just a good song for me to release.
Yeah. Well, with Same Old Places and also Where I've Been from earlier this year as well, it feels like you've kind of fallen onto a style and a sound that really works for you. You've kind of honed in that sound. So is that something that's happened consciously or just something that's organically kind of happened?
Yeah, I think both. I think I've realized that when you release music, you always learn from that release. So it's good to keep people engaged, and I'm honored that there's people that are asking me to release music. That I have a fan base to do that. That's amazing. But also, it's a selfish thing where it's anytime you put out music, you're able to look back at it in 3 months, 6 months, and a year, and be like, okay, how did this really represent me? How do I feel about it now? How is it holding up? What do I think about the production now? What do I think about the way that I wrote that, how I said those things? And I feel like I'm, through trial and error, honing in on a sound a little bit. And, I think that there's an edge. I grew up with music that is very accessible, pop rock, that kind of thing, where it's, pretty like, digestible, call it, by the masses, but I also like a little bit of an edge and grit. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm incorporating that and, being the biggest sort of version of myself, if that makes sense.
And you've mentioned in other interviews that you've done that you kind of never want to write about trucks. You've made a pact with yourself to not do that. You want to make it a little bit more diverse. So what inspires you creatively when you get into a writing room? What kind of ideas are floating around in your head when you go to write a song?
Yeah, to this point, I think I can actually say that every song I've written has been a true story. Has been actually like based on my own experiences. And relationships are very, very influential. I'm getting up there in my age now, but I have been through a lot of like relationships and stuff like that. So I try to tap into those. And I've always been fascinated by psychology and just human beings in general and how we interact with people. And so I try to write about those experiences and, reflecting on those. And then you take a song like Same Old Places, and I think almost every song of mine has an optimistic undertone. And I think that is how I see the world. So I almost always feel best when I'm writing about something that's maybe even sad or just a little bit like bittersweet. But I feel like there's, like I said, maybe a little bit of an optimistic undertone that I always keep as a theme. And, a song like Same Old Places, Where I've Been, I have an older song called Finally Free. They're all themes of sort of like finding yourself in that kind of thing. And that's a huge thing, self-exploration and the idea that we are all works in progress. All we can do is try to be better than we were yesterday. And through that journey, if you keep an open mind to bettering your life and bettering your circumstance, you'll learn so much about yourself and you'll grow. And I believe in those things.
So what's the long-term plan in terms of new music for you now? Are you happy doing it on the kind of single by single basis, or are you working towards an EP album at some point in the future?
Yeah, I'm pretty content with the singles thing. There's a part of me that would probably like to do an EP. So I am toying with that idea right now. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. But I do know that last year I only released 2 songs, and so I'm making it a point to hopefully release maybe 4 or 5 this year. So
Okay.
I do know that I want that. I want to maintain a high volume of content and in music for sure.
And one thing that we've noticed at Destination Country since working with you is just how dedicated your fan base are. You've got a group of absolute diehard fans who literally watch and listen to everything you do.
Yeah.
And that's such a good thing for you as a rising artist moving forward. So why do you think there is that connection, and what have you done consciously that's created that bond between you and the fans? Because it's really, really nice to see.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you noticing. A few of them have coined the phrase Moreno maniac, so I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I feel super blessed to have people who care about my music like that, and people who want to share it. And I think it starts with the music, and I think that like my mindset throughout since I started writing songs has been, I'm never trying to like reinvent the wheel. I'm trying to just give my genuine perspective on things, and I hope that comes across. And I think that hopefully that's why, is that people can relate to it. But then I also really do enjoy getting to know people and the engagement with fans. We're on week 15 this week of doing live streams because of quarantine and stuff like that. And that's been so cool, just to like, read comments and interact, and just kind of like, I go on there now with like no agenda. And it's just like, kind of like shooting the shit and like, yeah, what do you guys want to hear? And just kind of like, just hanging out. And I love that part of it. To me, that is the most amazing part of what I get to do, is the connection. And, if shows are being diminished at the moment, that's why I took to online to do that. So yeah, I hope to just keep expanding on that and growing that kind of family. And I've seen a lot of the fans, like, they've become friends with each other. So like, that's, to me, it's just awesome. I love seeing that. Yeah.
But just finally, Chris, in terms of the UK market, I wanted to ask you about that, because hopefully what we've been doing at Destination Country has kind of made people over here a little bit more aware of your music and what you're all about. So is it something you'd really like to tap into in years coming?
100%. I would like to tour out your way ASAP. That's I've seen other artists do it, and I know how passionate fans are for music out there, and it's a no-brainer. Yeah, I would love to come out and tour out that way, and even if it just starts off with something small, with just like going out and doing a couple acoustic shows, London and wherever else in Europe that makes sense. But yeah,
Fingers crossed
absolutely.
We can make that happen once all this coronavirus mess is over.
I hope so. Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, man. Thank you for doing this today. Appreciate your time. And we look forward to carrying on working with you and pushing your music at Destination Country.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you so much for your time. Honestly,
No
appreciate
worries,
it.
man. I'll speak to you soon, Chris.
All right, take care.
Thanks, man.